This video is made possible thanks to my supporters, especially Drowsy Lemon, Clown Keeper, and Maemander. Thanks so much, everyone! Mario Kart, eh? Love it! Fantastic game series! It's quite possibly the most universally understood and enjoyed concept for a video game. It's a series that has consistently been one of the best-selling games on each console it's been on. It's one of those games where, no matter who you're with, no matter the circumstance, you can play this game and always have fun. Like, really, try it. There was a guy at my uncle's funeral last week and I challenged him to a game of Mario Kart and he walked off acting like it was insensitive. Like, geez, just trying to lighten the mood, sorry man. Everyone loves Mario Kart. It's fun, simple to understand, and incredibly satisfying to get good at. And the series has been going on for such a long time at this point where everybody knows what it is, and some games in recent times have become huge events upon release. Mario Kart games are very well known for their massive online communities, a large group of people who are incredibly invested in competitive play and messing around with the game in order to get the shortest time possible on certain tracks. But I have terrible news. It wasn't always like this. No. Mario Kart wasn't always an incredibly loved series with different hidden secrets and varied mechanics. No. Mario Kart used to be bad. Let's rewind the clock to 1990. So, in 1990, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System had officially released in Japan to compete alongside Sega's 16-bit console, the Genesis. And Nintendo was once again on top of the world. Super Mario World was dominating the platforming genre, but Nintendo wanted something else. They wanted to expand their horizons. So, they made a fast-paced racing game called F-Zero. F-Zero is an incredibly fun game where you race on a futuristic terrain at high speeds. It was one of the first games to use the Mode 7 chip. Mode 7 was a special chip inside the cartridges which allowed for easy rotation and scaling in backgrounds. It's an insanely cool technology and allowed for some beautiful games to be made on the SNES. Some of them look straight up 3D, but F-Zero had one major flaw. It wasn't multiplayer. Yeah, so due to F-Zero being insanely taxing on the console's hardware, they couldn't allow for seamless multiplayer. So a few developers within Nintendo decided to work on a game with the idea of being entirely multiplayer, a racing game similar to F-Zero, but at drastically lower speeds. The game was initially just a generic kart racer unrelated to Mario, but as development progressed, they had a great idea to put some fucking red guy in the kart. So, with the theme decided upon, development progressed, and in 1992, Super Mario Kart was released to the world, or most of it anyways. The game didn't release until 1993 in some countries. The hell were they doing for the rest of the year then? Super Mario Kart is a very frustrating game, just getting that out of the way first. Like, sure, I suppose it's my fault, but the game is very, very hard for reasons I am about to get into. The game is set up very simply. You pick whether or not you want to do a Grand Prix, a compilation of 5 tracks set at 5 laps each, your speed class, either 50 or 100cc for those who haven't unlocked 150cc yet, and finally, your character, of which there were 8 available. Mario, Luigi, Princess Peach, Bowser, Yoshi, Koopa Troopa, Toad, and who the fuck? Yeah, Donkey Kong Jr. was apparently a big enough success in the gaming world to be included in the first Mario Kart game of a regular Donkey Kong. It gives the game a bit more originality, I suppose, but it's weird that they decided to pick him. To be fair to him, the modern Donkey Kong design with the tie wouldn't be introduced until Donkey Kong Country released 2 years later, so I suppose it's not too strange, I guess. These characters, by the way, have weight classes. Yep, all the way back in the first game they had weight classes. It isn't made explicitly clear, but characters such as Donkey Kong Jr. and Bowser take a longer time to accelerate than a character like Mario or Peach. Very minor difference, yes, but it's still something to take note of. The Grand Prix races go through 5 tracks as mentioned, and you race on different themed tracks. There are 3 Grand Prix available from the start, with a 4th unlockable one later on by beating all 3 cups in first place. Each track has a small set of single-use item panels that, once driven over, give you one of the game's main gimmicks, an item. These items range from offensive ones that slow down other races, to ones that give you a large speed advantage to, hey dude, do you want a funny yellow circle? The offensive items being the green and red shells, the lightning and the banana peel, all act differently. The shells can be thrown out in front of or behind you to hit an opposing racer, with the red one targeting the racer directly in front of you, to the best of its ability. With the banana peel being able to be thrown in front of or behind you, acting as a roadblock for other racers to drive into, slowing them down when hit, and the lightning power-up shrinks all of the races for a set amount of time, allowing you to get ahead. The star power-up from the platforming Mario games allows the driver to turn completely invincible for a short amount of time, and also giving them a temporary speed increase. If you hit other players or obstacles, they get stunned, meaning you're basically playing God mode when in this state. The mushroom also gives a slight speed boost, but it's kind of flawed to be honest. There's no indication as to when the item is being used, you just floor it and pray you don't hit a wall when you slow down. And it's not like you get an increase that stays with you until you hit a wall or drift. No, this speed increase just randomly disappears once it's over. Since there's no proper momentum system in this game, you just screech to a halt before going back to your regular speed. It's really unfun to control as well. Like, I've never felt something be so clunky in a video game before. It's incredibly wonky and weird unless you manage to come across a completely straight piece of terrain, which is very hard to come by in Super Mario Kart. A lot of these tracks are oddly curvy and unnatural in terms of the terrain, so it makes using speed boosts such as this one or playing on the higher speed class modes completely unfun or irrelevant sometimes, as additional speed ends up pointless. Speaking of pointless, the coin. Yes, waiter, I would like 0.4% additional speed per coin collected, thank you very much. These apparently give you a speed boost, and sadly, I can hardly notice. I already feel like I'm going insanely fast due to how the tracks are rendered, and I didn't really need to get given any more speed. Works fine though, it's a nice item for those in last place, and it works as a moment of frustration when you're in first or second place and want an item that helps you cut ahead of the person in front. Which is a brilliant segue into our last regular item, the feather. Yes, the feather from Super Mario World was brought over into the racing game, and you know what? I quite like this item. When it works, that is. As fantastic as this item is, it sometimes falls completely flat on its face. Like, there'll be times where you gotta use it in order to get a really sick shortcut and you just drop straight into a pit. The tracks have some really oddly sharp designs though, so the feather can be pretty useful for ghost houses and castle tracks. Strangely enough, these items are only available to players, as the CPUs have their own items that they can deploy at any time. The computers don't have to go over the item panels in order to use items, and some of their items are just straight up unavailable to you. Princess Peach and Toad have access to a poison mushroom which shrinks the player and allows you to be squished, which is an incredible setback for you, almost guaranteeing a loss. Bowser has his fireballs and Yoshi has his eggs. Both act basically the same. They're placed on the track and stop the player completely when hit. Donkey Kong Jr. can throw banana peels whenever he wants, and throw as many as he wants. It ends up being a massive barrage of bananas. Don't leave you alone, goddammit. And finally, Mario and Luigi can pull out a star whenever they want, absolutely destroying anything in their path. They always use the star when it's most inconvenient for you. Wanna know what else is inconvenient for you? The controls! This game's controls are so incredibly wonky. You're piloting in a 3D space using 2D controls. Since the Super Nintendo's controller didn't have an analog control scheme, you have to play the entirety of Super Mario Kart with the D-pad. How fun! And like, even playing on newer hardware doesn't fix the problem. Since this game was made with the D-pad in mind, it was obviously never optimized for a controller with controls that allow you to move in a 3D space. It makes it so incredibly janky when you go to drive around corners and drift. I literally don't even use the drift intentionally whenever I play this game. Since the drift is incredibly tight and wasn't built to properly account for these incredibly sharp turns in some of these tracks, it's 1,000 times easier to just let off the gas. And the gas is on B. Yep, you accelerate using the B, but pretty sure that's illegal in 49 out of the 50 states. Looking at you, Wisconsin. Make it illegal, damn it! Because none of them buttons on the Super Nintendo controller are pressure sensitive, it means you're only going up one consistent speed, and when you drift there's no specific indication on how hard you want to drift, so you just take a sharp 90-degree angle instead. I wish there was some kind of special controller made for this game specifically that allowed for pressure sensitive controls, but I guess that'd be kind of impossible on an SNES, and especially considering those kinds of controllers didn't really become commonplace till the PlayStation 2 in 2000. You can also do a little hop that allows you to jump in the air slightly. Sort of useful for avoiding certain ramps and obstacles, not necessarily too special, but it's notable for being unused by most players due to it sharing a button with the drift function. If you drift or slide for too long, however, you can actually end up spinning out, which is just the absolute worst. It can be prevented by having a bunch of coins, but when your opponents keep giving you little taps on the shoulder, that's hard to maintain a steady number. You can also spin out at the very start of a race by charging up your card before the countdown actually starts. It's a little more generous in this game since you have to hold it down for basically the full duration of the countdown for it to have any effect, but it's still one of the only actually good additions to this game, and it's still in the series to this day, getting minor improvements and tweaks as the series goes on. Doesn't that all help that the recovery time in this game is atrocious? If you fall off the track or get attacked by a mole or even hit an item, you feel it! It takes so long for you to start back up again or for Lakitu to come and pick you back up and move you back onto the track, it's insanely infuriating. But you want to know what makes this game 40 times more insufferable? The rubber banding and ranking system. The computer players in this game just sit on your ass the entire time. No matter how many times you hit them with shells or stay in front, they just keep on coming back. And yeah, so unlike future games in the series, you're not allowed to finish outside of the top 4 positions. Like in future entries, you come in last place and the game goes, hey pal, you suck. But in Super Mario Kart, if you're racing and you aren't in the top 4, the game lets you know with this absolutely disgusting beep sound letting you know, yeah, damn right you f***ing suck ass. And mind you, you only get 3 lives per Grand Prix in this game, so if you mess up enough times, that's it, game over, back to the start with you, and you only obtain new lives by finishing in the same position 3 times in a row, meaning you can only get 1 extra life for the rest of the Grand Prix, if you're good enough. Do I need to say anything? What an incredibly flawed system for a kart racer. I understand the single player element of having a live system. It incentivizes the player to get good at the game so they never lose a life and manage to unlock all the cups in the game. But even in 2-player mode you still have a lives counter, but it's linked per player, so that just causes more problems. Cause like, if one of the players loses all their lives, they're still a part of the race, so then what's the point in including lives in multiplayer, and then to a further extent, why at all? The lives aren't a thing in the versus races, so why include them? It's such a strange and unnecessary addition to a game that would have been otherwise brilliant. And speaking of multiplayer, what the hell? Like, I get that 2-player was the entire focus of the game, but why is the single-player mode cropped into these small-ass boxes? I mean, at least when you play on your own, it's standard to either a map, which is not all that helpful, or a rear view, which also isn't all that helpful. But like, you could have kept the split screen for 2-player mode exclusively, no? How about the tracks though? How are we oh my god! What the hell is this? I completely understand and sympathize with the fact they had to make a game on a console that was purely only capable of creating 2D graphics and incredibly primitive 3D environments, but this is just hard to look at. Some of the environments in this game look very, very funky, and that's not a good thing. A lot of the tracks have issues with depth perception as they render incredibly weirdly. I understand that the hardware was limited, but at certain times this makes me want to rip my eyes out. This looks horrible. Unlike, the environments are cool, I like the muddy tracks and I absolutely adore the Bowser's Castle and Ice Rink tracks, but due to Mode 7 they warp insanely strangely and it hurts to look at. Some of the tracks have obstacles that are insanely unfun to navigate around, and because they couldn't just render a 3D model for you to drive around, it comes off as really unfair and leaves a sour taste in my mouth, especially considering these weird gimmicks are in a couple of the main tracks. And it looks especially funky when you have these fantastic looking sprites drawn over the backgrounds. These sprites are really pretty looking and they look odd when put on top of these stretched backgrounds. All of the sprite work here is incredible, keeps the established Mario series art style and expands upon it, but it just looks weird when placed on top of these tracks. And it doesn't help that most of the themes in the game are repeated. Obviously memory limitations played a huge part in the reason why all the track aesthetics except one get reused, but all the tracks feel samey and none of them feel unique enough to the point where they stand out from their other variants. Like, there isn't a lot that stands out between Mario Circuit 1 and Mario Circuit 4, outside of maybe 1 or 2 special gimmicks like the moles or oil slicks, but there are 4 Mario Circuits, 3 Bowser's Castles, and 3 Ghost Valley stages. Of course, the most special stage is Rainbow Road, what would later become an absolute staple of the series, being featured in every single game in the series. And oh man, does it totally deserve it. Rainbow Road has to be the most pretty track in this entire game. It's incredible, especially considering the limitations of the SNES. And finally we have the battle mode. The battle mode in this game is very simple yet fun. There are no stupid shit with lives, no dumbass game overs, just plain and simple wacky Mario Kart fun. Each player gets 3 balloons and I have to pop them using different offensive items, which actually brings me back around to the items. The Boo item gives the player a temporary invincibility and allows them to pass through players whilst they steal an item from their opponent. It's a really fun item to use and it's a nice contrast from the rest of the ones in the game. All 4 of the battle courses are just simple boxes themed around some of the existing courses in the game. And you know what? Yeah, mod is fun. Love it. It's super fun to sit down with a friend and throw a shit ton of shells at one another. All of this topped off by an absolutely amazing soundtrack. Like, really, for being an SNES game, this game has some insanely good music tracks. Yeah, it's a shame that most of them are shared amongst the themes, but there are some insanely good songs in here. Big fan of the Bowser's Castle music track, and Mario Circuit 2. Find that one to be really catchy, and of course Rainbow Road has a pretty good song. And yeah, that's it. That's the original Super Mario Kart. A game I can only describe as being one big experience. Not bad by any means, but it's certainly not good. This game is incredibly charming and I love certain aspects of its gameplay and it's a fantastic groundwork for future games in the series, but there are just so many issues with how the game plays, like the CPUs having their own items and some stages being very hard to look at and the split screen being really wonky when playing alone. This is not to a franchise, but it's not much more than that. Like, sure it's fun, but not a game I'd ever come back to revisit. Future games absolutely improve upon everything in this format, and trust me, that's a good thing. The series just needs a bit more of that Nintendo charm to be perfect. You know what doesn't need that Nintendo charm though? Those video game prices. $80 for Mario Kart World? Are you kidding me?